He hadn't slept in 4 nights. Not really. A child shouldn't know what real fear feels like, but Marcus knew. He felt it every time headlights swept across his bedroom wall. He felt it every time footsteps creaked in the hallway after midnight. And worst of all, he felt it at dawn when he had to go to school, knowing the man waiting at home would still be there when he returned. 9 years old, 9, and he carried a kind of terror inside him that grown men can barely name. That Thursday morning, something broke in him. Maybe it was the bruises he could no longer hide properly. Maybe it was the way his teacher pretended not to notice. Maybe it was the fact that the police had come twice and left twice, calling it a domestic dispute, as if that made everything okay. Whatever it was, Marcus hit rock bottom and did something no frightened child should ever have to do. He walked across the parking lot of a biker bar. The moment of decision. Marcus's school backpack bounced against his spine as he walked across the cracked asphalt of Ridge Street. Cars rushed past, but he barely heard them. His heart was pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. The Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club's bar, the Watering Hole, stood on the corner with darkened windows and a row of gleaming Harley-Davidson machines shining in the rising sun. Everyone in town knew the Wolves. Veterans, welders, mechanics, outlaws, but disciplined, loyal, and territorial. People whispered about them. Children feared them. Grown men avoided eye contact. But Marcus saw something different. He saw safety. He didn't quite understand why. Maybe because nobody messed with the wolves. Maybe because they looked like the only people strong enough to stop a monster like his stepfather. Or maybe because last week, when he passed by on his way to school, one of them, Tank, had held the door open for an elderly woman and called her, ma'am. Brutal men don't do things like that, he'd thought. Now he stood in front of the door, shaking so hard he could barely raise his hand to knock. Inside there was rumbling, laughter, the clinking of mugs, boots on wood. He pushed the door open. The bar went quiet. 10 men turned their heads. Leather vests, tattoos, long beards, heavy boots. Men who looked like they'd been carved from boulders. And in the middle of it all sat Kodiak, president of the Iron Wolves. Broad shoulders, gray-streaked beard, eyes that could read a man's soul like an open book. But those eyes softened the moment they landed on the boy. Marcus's throat constricted. Tears burned, but he forced them back. He couldn't cry. Not here. He had to be brave. Brave enough to say the words that had kept him awake for days. Kodiak leaned forward on his elbows. You lost, son. Marcus swallowed hard. No, sir. Kodiak nodded slowly. Then what can we do for you? This was it. The moment. That one impossible sentence he'd practiced whispering under his blanket but never thought he'd actually say out loud. He gripped the straps of his backpack until his knuckles turned white. Will you? His voice broke. Will you save me from my stepfather? The room went quiet again, but this time it felt heavy. Electric. Tank stood up from his bar stool. Phantom's jaw clenched. Razor cursed softly. Every wolf suddenly sat up straighter, as if a switch had been flipped. Kodiak didn't move. He just blinked once, slowly and hard, like someone suppressing a wave of rage. Son, Kodiak said quietly. Look at me. Marcus raised his eyes. Does he hurt you? Marcus nodded. A tiny nod. But it was enough. Kodiak exhaled through his nose, emitting a growl. Has anyone in this town tried to help you? The police came, Marcus whispered. But he said I fell, and they believed him. And your mother? She's afraid of him too. Phantom muttered, Jesus. Tank stepped closer, his boots echoing across the floor. Son, do you know what happens when you walk into a biker bar and say something like that? Marcus shook his head. Tank's voice softened. It means you're one of ours now. Understand. Kodiak shot Tank a warning look, but the truth was already out. The wolves protected their own, even if their own was a trembling 9-year-old boy in a faded Spider-Man hoodie. Kodiak stood up. 6'3", 250 pounds. A wall of muscle, leather, and fury, not at Marcus, but for him. He walked around the table, knelt down so he was eye level with the boy, and placed a massive hand on Marcus's shoulder. We'll take care of this, Kodiak said. You're safe now. You hear me? Marcus nodded again, this time with the first glimmer of hope he'd felt in years. Kodiak raised his chin to the other wolves. Get ready. Now. Nobody lays a hand on a child in my town. Boots thundered. Leather creaked. Outside, engines began to roar. And just like that, the iron wolves moved, not with chaos, but with purpose, with rage, with the kind of determination only men who've seen war carry inside them. Because a little boy asked for help. And for the wolves, that was all it took. The road to school. The engines outside roared like an earthquake rolling across Ridge Street. Marcus had heard motorcycles before, but never like this. Never with the kind of thunder that made windows rattle in their frames. It didn't sound like machines. It sounded like a promise. A promise that something in his life was going to change forever. Kodiak kept a steady hand on Marcus's shoulder as the boy flinched at the noise. "Easy, son," he murmured. "That sound's on your side now." Tank pushed the door open, a black leather wall of muscle and tattoos stepping into the sunlight. Phantom followed, silent and calculating, always watching angles, exits, threats. Razor cracked his knuckles and muttered something about respectfully rearranging someone's face. But Kodiak didn't move yet. He stayed crouched in front of Marcus, as if the whole world had shrunk to this moment. "Do you have a safe place to go right now?" he asked. Marcus shook his head. "If he sees me before school, he'll get angry. If I come home after school and he's drunk, he'll be even angrier." Kodiak's jaw tightened. A tiny movement, but it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken curses. "All right," Kodiak said. "Then you're coming with us." Marcus blinked. "To school." Kodiak smiled. Not a big smile, just enough to soften the scars on his face. "To school and beyond, if we have to." Razor leaned in. "Boss, you sure about taking him in broad daylight? The town's gonna lose it." Kodiak didn't break eye contact with Marcus. "Good." And that one word sealed everything. Tank returned from outside. "We ready to roll?" Phantom nodded. "Area's clear." No sign of the stepfather's vehicle anywhere on Ridge Street. Kodiak stood up, tall and slow. "Let's move." Marcus swallowed. His hands were shaking again. Part fear, part disbelief. Are they all coming?" "All of us," Kodiak confirmed. Tank chuckled. "Kid, this is nothing. You should see what happens when we're really angry." Phantom smacked Tank on the back of the head. "He doesn't need that image right now, idiot." Kodiak threw both of them a look, then opened the door and stepped aside. "After you, Marcus." The morning sun hit the boy's face as he stepped outside. The wolves, motorcycles lined the curb like armored beasts. Chrome gleamed, exhaust pipes steamed in the cool air. A few passers-by froze at the sight of the child emerging from the bar with the bikers. One woman gasped. Another man shook his head and muttered to himself. Nobody dared step closer. Marcus felt small, but not the frightened kind of small he felt at home. This was different. This was small in the midst of a pack of giants who had decided to stand around him. The story continues with the ride to school, the confrontation with the stepfather, police intervention, and Marcus's new life with the Iron Wolves. Epilogue. The Iron Wolves understood exactly what it meant to protect the innocent. Men who had fought, bled, and survived their whole lives. Men who weren't afraid of tyrants or systems. Sometimes heroes don't wear uniforms or suits or capes. Sometimes they wear worn leather and carry their own scars. The greatest battles aren't fought with fists or weapons, but with compassion, with courage, with people willing to stand up when everyone else looks away. Heroes aren't born. They're made in the moment when someone decides, this child will not suffer another day.